Welcome back to the channel where truth burns brighter than any lie and every secret eventually bleeds into the open. Tonight, we're diving deep into the storm that just tore through Fairmont Crest. Ted's confession didn't just change one life, it detonated the fragile balance holding this world together. Hidden bloodlines, shattered loyalties, and a father's desperate attempt at redemption have sent every character spiraling into chaos. Nothing is sacred anymore, love turns to punishment, pride becomes poison, and the line between guilt and justice is vanishing fast. So buckle up, because this isn't just another recap, this is the unraveling of everything they thought they could control. One truth. One confession. One irreversible. Before the confession, before the air cracked with the weight of unspoken words, Ted lived inside a quiet that was almost holy in its precision. Years ago, his life had been the image of control, an empire built on discipline and a family assembled like a blueprint. Eva was never supposed to be part of that design. She was the secret fragment of a life Ted once abandoned to keep another intact. The woman who bore her had died young, leaving behind questions wrapped in resentment, and Ted's silence had been the wall that separated truth from ruin. Yet every day he saw traces of the girl in places he could not name, the tilt of her eyes in a photograph, the echo of her laughter in the corridors of Fairmont Crest. The guilt became oxygen. He breathed it until it felt like survival. As years unfolded, Ted's veneer began to crack under the subtle erosion of time. Anita's ambitions consumed what was left of their marriage, Vernon's schemes shadowed their empire, and Leslie's legal maneuvers turned family loyalty into collateral. In the background, Eva's rise became a phenomenon, her brilliance, her defiance, her name whispered with both envy and admiration. Every success she achieved pressed harder on the part of Ted that wanted to claim her, yet the shame of his past chained him to silence. When he finally reappeared in her orbit, he did it under the mask of mentorship, guiding her from a distance while the truth festered underneath. But the universe at Fairmont Crest thrives on exposure. Madison's downfall had left a vacuum of morality that everyone rushed to fill, and Ted found himself cornered by transparency, by the same honesty he once demanded from others. It was Leslie who uncovered the sealed file that hinted at Eva's lineage, a file Ted had thought buried in a safe no one could breach. Anita read it first, her reaction a fusion of disbelief and disgust, not for what he had done, but for how it could destroy their image. In her mind, legacy outweighed redemption. For Ted, the discovery meant the walls of secrecy were closing in, and the only way out was through confession. When he finally stood before Eva, the words were not prepared. They came from a place beneath intellect and pride. He told her, with trembling resolve, that he was proud to be her father. For a heartbeat, time split open. The shock in her eyes mirrored every year he had chosen cowardice over courage. That moment, raw and brutal, carried every consequence waiting to detonate. Eva's identity, once a shield against the world, fractured into pieces she no longer recognized. The room fell into a silence heavier than grief. Ted mistook that silence for forgiveness. He didn't see that it was the sound of something breaking so deeply it could never be rebuilt. Behind closed doors, Anita began recalculating. To her, this revelation was an extinction-level event. If the truth reached Fairmont Crest's boardrooms, everything they built, every negotiation, every partnership, would rot under scandal. She couldn't let that happen. And so she set into motion a quiet campaign of containment, suppress the documents, silence the witnesses, and if needed, discredit Eva. Vernon watched with a cynic's smile, knowing that destruction disguised as preservation had always been Anita's finest talent. Ted was too broken to notice. In revealing his truth, he had traded control for vulnerability, and the empire that once obeyed him began to move without him. Yet the cruelest part was not the backlash from others, it was Eva's eyes when she finally looked at him again. They no longer saw a father or a mentor, but the architect of her confusion. She walked away without words, leaving Ted in the center of a hollow victory. The truth was out, but it hadn't set anyone free, it had only rearranged the chains. And as the night closed in, Fairmont Crest became quieter than ever, as if holding its breath for the collapse that was still to come. After the confession, Ted became a ghost wandering through the ruins of his own making. Eva stopped returning his messages. The foundation that bore his name began to wither under whispers that he had falsified key documents years ago to cover a paternity scandal. Whether true or not, the perception alone was poison. Anita's crisis management efforts only deepened suspicion, her denials too rehearsed, her timing too exact. Within weeks, Ted's reputation eroded faster than any statement could repair. Eva retreated inward. The revelation had torn apart her sense of identity, leaving her trapped between grief and rage. She replayed her life in fragments, each achievement, each obstacle, now tainted by the question of how much of it had been shaped by a father she never knew she had. In her nightmares, every award, every headline shimmered with the invisible fingerprints of Ted's influence. The independence she once cherished felt counterfeit. Her anger metastasized into something darker, the need to erase him. Meanwhile, Leslie and Vernon began to circle like vultures. Vernon whispered that the only way to stabilize the family name was to sever Ted publicly, to let him fall and rebuild without him. Leslie, torn between loyalty and law, drafted documents that would quietly strip him of authority. Anita signed them with hands that didn't tremble. The board approved the transition unanimously. Ted, unaware, continued to attend meetings that had already moved past him. The night he discovered the truth, his name removed from the foundation charter, he returned to the house that had once been his sanctuary. The lights were dim, the air still carrying the ghost of Eva's perfume from her last visit. In the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back, hollow eyes, trembling hands, a lifetime of power reduced to insignificance. For the first time, he understood that telling the truth doesn't absolve guilt, it only exposes it to light, where it decays. Eva, meanwhile, spiraled in silence. She tried to convince herself that she was free now, that she owed him nothing, yet the emotional gravity of blood refused to release her. Late at night, she found herself reading old interviews, old speeches, searching for hidden clues of the man she now hated. Her pride clashed with her longing, creating a storm that left her unable to sleep, unable to breathe. The anger she carried was too heavy to sustain and too sharp to drop. When news broke that Ted had been hospitalized an overdose of sleeping pills, though the reports called it exhaustion, the entire Fairmont Crest paused. Some whispered pity, others disgust. Anita managed the narrative, a man under stress, a temporary collapse. But those closest knew better. Ted had crossed the threshold from remorse into despair, trapped in the silence of a truth that had consumed more than it healed. Eva visited once. She didn't speak, and neither did he. The machines hummed a rhythm between them, the only sound of something still alive. When she left, she took nothing with her, no forgiveness, no closure. Outside, the sky was the same gray as the morning she learned the truth. The world continued, indifferent and immaculate. And somewhere inside that sterile room, Ted finally realized the irony. The words that were supposed to liberate had imprisoned them both. He had wanted to be seen as a father, instead, he had become a cautionary tale. In Fairmont Crest, where truth and power never coexist for long, Ted's downfall became another whispered warning: confession is not redemption, and love, once delayed, always returns as ruin. And so, as the lights dim on this chapter of Fairmont Crest, the story doesn't end, it simply exhales before the next storm. Ted's confession has left fault lines running through every corner of this world, and the people standing near him are already sliding toward the edge. Eva walks away carrying a name she never asked for, her heart torn between blood and betrayal. Anita rebuilds her walls higher, trading every fragment of empathy for control. Leslie and Vernon circle like predators disguised as saviors, turning morality into leverage, while the empire that once looked unbreakable starts to decay from within. The truth was meant to cleanse, but here, it only corrodes, seeping into boardrooms, family dinners, and whispered alliances until everything tastes like guilt. Fairmont Crest will not recover quietly. The whispers will turn into rumors, the rumors into wars, and by the time the next sunrise hits those glass towers, nothing will feel familiar. Somewhere, Ted lies between repentance and ruin, a man haunted by the simple truth that love confessed too late becomes a curse. And Eva, her silence will not last forever. Vengeance is just grief wearing new clothes, and when she finally moves, the tremor will reach everyone who ever tried to bury the past. This is not the end of the story. It's the pause before the reckoning, the moment when the cost of every lie, every withheld word, and every calculated act of love will come due. Stay with us, because the next truth waiting to surface at Fairmont Crest might just destroy the last pieces of what they still dare to call family.